In today's video, I am going to be making a chess set, but not just any chess set. It's going to be a fantasy chess set. You'll see more as we go along, but welcome back to my channel. I hope you're well. If you're new here, I'm Jessica. I create art, usually using resin. It's always a good time, so I'm glad you're here. And let's get started with this fun project. So we're going to start this project as a basic chess set to begin with. And for that, we need a mold. And I have this mold by Finalizing Resin. So let's unbox this. I am going to leave you links and discount codes in the description. So we have a good size chess mold. We have the pieces, the molds for the pieces. We have pouches. These are so nice and soft. That is cute. I was not expecting those. And we have this other mold for I don't know what these are for. Probably for another game, but my knowledge on the subject, as most subjects, is very limited. So if you know what this is for, leave me a comment. And there's also some mica powders, which is fun. Again, wasn't expecting those because I literally just got the mold, but it's always good to have micas. So now that we have everything to get started, I guess we're going to mix up some resin and get going. So I am mixing up my J Addiction Officials resin. Once again, links in the description below. And the vibe that I'm going for this chess set is kind of watery, molten ice, glacier vibes, or like an ice block. You'll see. I mean, that's my vision, and also how it turns out is a whole other story. But basically, I am tinting my resin a bluish tint, and I know water is not really blue necessarily, or ice isn't necessarily blue, but to give that vibe, I am tinting this blue, and I'm just spraying on some isopropyl alcohol on the chess mold, and again, just to prevent some bubbles. Although, having said that, like I said, this project is like watery and icy, so if there are a few bubbles, I'm not overly fussed. And that's it, pouring on my resin, and then I'm doing the same with the chess pieces. Again, just like spraying some alcohol and filling these up with my resin.
The next day.
It's the next day, and all of this is now cured, and it's time to unmold. Bear in mind, it's winter here, and so my resin is slightly soft and bendy, but that's fine. I was just too impatient to unmold these, and it's literally the next morning first thing. So this is looking good. There's actually literally no bubbles, and I'm super impressed with how this looks. So we're gonna put this to the side, and we're gonna do a lot more with this later, but now moving on to the pieces. So as I start to unmold these, I can see that it has not worked well at all. There were bubbles trapped, which has caused like big gaps in the pieces, and yeah, some of them didn't even make it in one piece. Like the top ball portion is separate, the rest of the piece is separate, and it's not worked. So I already know I'm gonna have to redo this, and I'm gonna have to think about how I do it differently so I don't get this problem. Okay, so my plan B to get these the way I want them to is to change my resin. And again, if you've worked with resin, it's important that you're using the right kind of resin for the project, and I feel like I should have all along used deep pore resin, but I'm going to switch to that now. It's a lot thinner, and even though it takes a while to cure, I feel like that's the best way to go with this project, because I do need it to get into the nooks and crannies of the mold, and without having bubbles and without having any pockets where bubbles are trapped. So switching to deep pour, and the other thing I'm going to do differently is add another step of the bubble removal machine by Resiners. So I'm doing my due diligence to make sure I'm doing everything so I can get it right this time, because I don't want to waste another batch of these pieces and waste all that resin. So fingers crossed, attempt number 2. It's always so satisfying to watch the bubbles rise up and literally disappear. So again, I'm going to link the Resiners bubble free machine in the description for you below. Okay, so my resin is looking good and it's time to pour these into the pieces. But again, I'm doing another step, which is spraying a tiny amount of isopropyl alcohol into each piece, then pouring a tiny amount of my deep pour resin and then kind of massaging it into the mold and into all the gaps and the detail of the mold. And then at the end, I'm going to go ahead and fill all of these up at the top. And I really hope, fingers crossed, I really hope this works. So as you can see, I took a lot of time, a lot of time to actually do these right, spraying each one of them and massaging each one of them. And I don't have to worry about time when working with deep pour because you do have a lot of working time anyway. So yeah, really hope this was worth it. Another spritz of alcohol and I'm ready to pour the rest in. The second attempt turned out absolutely perfect. I mean, look at them. Let me bring you down. They look like glass. And my favorite ones are these horse ones. How cute are these? There is literally no bubble and they look perfect. I guess now I'm going to follow the same steps and do a second batch because obviously we need another set. And I'm gonna do those slightly darker because obviously we need them to be different. But yeah, so let's do that. Also, Sky wants you to like, comment and sub and ring that notification bell if you haven't already. Okay, so we're literally gonna do the same thing again, only this time I'm going to go slightly darker with my tint. Again, keeping it very subtle, just an extra drop or so to get the slight variation in the shade of blue. And the good thing about this video is that, I'm sharing my failed attempt, so you don't have to fail like I did and you get it right. So now we know what works. So if you're making this chess set, do what I did the second time around.
One eternity later.
Okay, now that my second batch is set aside to cure, I'm going to move on to do this step that I need to do, which is kind of go over and darken every alternate square on the chessboard. And this you could have done right from the beginning when you poured the resin into the chessboard. You could have done a different shade or colored them at that point into the squares. But because I was not entirely sure in my head how I wanted this project to go, I thought, you know what, I'm going to pour it one color and then I'm going to come and figure out what I want to do later. So this is me tinting the alternate squares with a slightly, ever so slightly darker tint. Again, I am not going for a high contrast here. I just want it to be playable if you're actually playing chess, so you can see the difference, but it's all very subtle and still very blue and icy looking. So all I'm doing is pouring in a tiny amount of resin, and for this one I'm using the regular crafting resin, and then I'm just using a toothpick-ish thing to kind of nudge it and guide it along the edge of the squares carefully. Nothing about this project has been fast and quick, it's all been a slow process, but I have to say I quite enjoyed it. It was calming and quite relaxing to do all of these steps, so I can't complain. This isn't one of those projects you're going to do with your rushed or pressed for time. So now that we have the basic chess set ready, we can move on to make it fabulous. And my idea is this chess set that I saw on Instagram. It's by a creator. I'm going to link them in the description below. And it is this watery, icy, glassy shape, mainly watery, and I love how chunky it is. I love how it's got all that texture at the bottom. And so I'm going to attempt it. Don't know if it's going to work. Listen, by now you should know on this channel, we're just like trying stuff. We do not know if it's going to work out. So, but you're going to see it nonetheless. So I have some ideas how we may be able to achieve a similar effect. So I guess we're going to find out if it works. So let's do it. Okay, so I got this little mold, I suppose, which is used for cakes and stuff from Amazon, and it stretches out to, so it stretches out to the size of the chest base that we made. As you can see, that fits perfectly in there. So I'm going to use this as a structure or a mold to build that irregular shape of the bottom of the chessboard. So in order to do that, we're going to use possibly some stones or pebbles or something at the bottom, and then we're going to cover that up with some clear plastic to get like a wavy effect using those stones, like somewhat like that. And then we're going to cast in it. So, and then hopefully that'll give us that effect. And then we can go ahead, while our resin is still a bit tacky, go ahead and put this in up top. So that's the plan. I hope it makes sense. That's because the creator on the video that I am inspired by did not share any process, and this is the process that I came up with to make this. So we'll figure out as we go. So yeah, let's do it. So I happen to have these wooden blocks, kind of like pebble shaped blocks, because I literally could not find any pebbles. So, and these are going to work just fine. So we're going to use these, and all you need is something of that shape which can kind of cause like dips in the plastic, so then you can get a more of a like wavy effect or kind of like that texture that I'm going for. So I'm just like randomly placing these down under my plastic, obviously, and then I'm going to use my heat gun to heat up the plastic and get it to kind of flow into that shape around these pebbles. Okay, I'm happy with how this looks, and we can now move on to pouring resin into this. And again, I'm using deep pour resin just because, as you can see, there's a lot of depth to this, and again, we don't want any bubbles and any of that, so we're gonna go ahead and pour our resin into it. And already I think it's gonna work. I think it's gonna work, you guys, but I'm not gonna speak too soon. Okay, so that was my first layer of resin. This time I did not use my bubble removal machine, only because I'm using deep pour and it's a pretty flat surface in general, so it wasn't too fast. Deep pour is usually quite good with getting bubbles out, unless it's like a small mold with like lots and lots of gaps and details. So I'm going to be able to just torch the bubbles at the top once they start to come up to the surface. And then it's just a case of filling in more resin and just layering it up. And can you see that icy effect at the bottom? I am beginning to get so excited about this. It's gonna work. Okay, I knew it would. In my head, you know, with logic, I thought it would. But you just don't know, do you? Because you don't always anticipate all the things that could go wrong or all the things that you didn't think of until you actually do the thing. But it's gonna work. It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
Yeah, we get it already.
Okay, and now it's literally the final layer. I think I'm happy with the depth. If you're curious, I poured this in 3 layers, all deep pour, and I waited just a tiny bit, not until the resin was fully cured, but it was somewhat cured, to pour this.
The next day.
Okay, so now that the last layer of resin is tacky, I can go ahead and put this board that we made down onto it. And this is where we end up getting bubbles. We get a few big ones, a few tiny ones, only because obviously the surface tension between the board and the resin underneath. and it obviously formed as air bubbles while I was placing it down. Luckily for me, this project is watery, icy vibes, and like I said, a few bubbles I'm not fussed with. I suppose if you wanted to avoid any bubbles, it might be a good idea to spray isopropyl alcohol at the bottom of this chessboard and maybe a little on the surface and then place it down. That's just something I'm thinking in hindsight, but I'm not fussed just because I was going for water vibes anyway on this. But if you were doing something else and you wanted no bubbles, maybe give that a try. So now, again, I'm going to leave this to cure fully because I'm probably going to give it a couple of days. This was deep pour, so it's going to take a while, and we will be back to unmold it.
The following Thursday.
Okay, so it's been 2 days, and I think I'm going to give it a go unmolding, and I'm going to take off the outer rim, the cake mold that we used, and can I just say that worked so well. I'm so going to be using that for other projects, but for now that was so easy to remove. But as I'm pulling away the plastic, I can see that the resin is not entirely cured. It's still a bit bendy, so I don't want to mess this up. It's gone so well and so smoothly, and I think it's just best that I leave it for another couple of days before I attempt to pull away the plastic.
Later.
Okay, so 2 more days after the first attempt to peel away, and it's coming off a lot easier now because the resin is harder than what it was. So now I can go ahead and do this. So it took a while to get the plastic off, and it did get stuck in a few of the nooks and crannies, so I'm just trying to pull that away, but it wasn't too bad. Also, I think I was just trying to be careful because I didn't want it to like tear and then cause me to have more trouble ripping it out. So it wasn't too bad at all. I will totally do this again. Okay, so now I need to figure out sanding, and I'm absolutely dreading. There's obviously a lot of like sharp edges, especially at the top where I placed the board on and the resin underneath and everything. So I'm gonna have to figure how I sand this, and I'm not looking forward to it. Okay, as I was looking at the sides, I realized that actually I won't have to sand it all. We might get away with using our deburring tool because the only thing that is sharp is the top lip and the top edge. The rest of it is pretty smooth and nice because we had that plastic everywhere. So I cannot tell you how relieved I am that I'm not going to be dealing with sanding and any of the sanding dust. And deburring tools are a game changer. Now that my edges are taken care of, the final thing left to do is give this entire thing a nice flood coat, and I am just using clear resin at this point, giving it a nice massage, also taking it over the edge just so I can smooth out any of the marks from the deburring tool and just give it like a nice uniform finish, even though it's quite heavily textured, but at least it's all smooth to touch even on the side. And now, you guys, are you ready for the reveal? I am so chuffed. This is one of those projects where I just there's always something that goes wrong. And I know, okay, I had to redo the chess pieces, but the rest of it, like the hard part, went so smoothly and so well. And I'm so chuffed. I cannot believe how well this turned out. Look at it. I mean, just look at it. And how simple was this, you guys? Like a cake mold and some plastic. Like, thank me later, but this is a game changer. And that chunky edge, it's everything. Like, it's literally everything. I was so excited about this chess piece that I even invited myself for a little bit of a chess game with me. So this is me versus me playing chess. And I don't know if you can tell, but none of us actually know how to play chess. But how fun is this? So this is a shot where you can see some of those bubbles. But again, I don't know. They don't look bad. They're very like random, big, small ones. And they're not like crowded in one place. They're kind of like embedded into the water. It's almost like a glacier. Like, there's water trapped in a cube of ice situation. Love it. As much as I love this set, it does not go quite with the aesthetics of my home, and even though I would absolutely love to keep it, but it's a bit out of place with the colors that I have in my home, and so I'm going to be listing this up for sale. But if you're watching this video and you're interested in it, you know where to find me. All the links are down there.
I hope you've enjoyed this project as much as I've enjoyed making it, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye! If you've enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you will like these too, so go check those out.